30. He separates. He's to the 20, to the 10, to the 5. Touchdown, Florida State. Warwick got up third down.
Winky looking Winky. Wants to throw the knockout punch to Warwick. Warwick open. Touchdown. He does a touchdown. He did catch it. Touchdown, Florida State. Oh, Peter Warwick, how'd you do that?
Kermit Whitfield to the left side. A hole to the 30. Kermit Whitfield to the 30. To the 20. 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, FSU. Kermit Whitfield. A 100-yard touchdown.
Here's the snap. Winston rolling right. Throws the pass on the other.
It's caught. It's caught. It's caught. Touchdown, FSU. Kelvin Benjamin.
We're doing it for everybody. We're doing it big all over the country, all over the world. And I'm proud. I'm proud to say I'm a Florida State Seminole.
This is the Garnet and Old Podcast with your hosts, Ryan Eastman and Vince Ciccarelli. It is Tuesday night, which means it's time for the Garnet and Old Show. No inside info, no contacts, no problem. Vince, how are you doing on this wonderful Tuesday evening?
I'm doing great, Ryan. It's May 9th. It's hard to believe how fast the year is going. I know you agree with me. You don't want it to go too fast because you don't want to wish your life away, but it's also, we're kind of in the doldrums, right? As far as sports are concerned.
For active sports, yes, but as far as the transfer portal goes, a lot of stuff going on this weekend. Florida State hosted Michigan State wide receiver Keon Coleman, who had over 600 yards receptions last year. So really a key prospect, especially after the departure of Michael Pittman. And we also hosted UAB safety Jalen Key, who is wanted by many, right? So how are you feeling about that? What is your take on those transfers or potential transfers?
Yeah, I think both of them we have a really good shot at. And, a couple of years ago, the transfer portal isn't what it is now. But, considering where we are now, we have made strides. We're in the running for both. I mean, some would say, for Jalen Key specifically, it's between us and Bama, I think, right? And I think Keon Coleman, I think he's got Ole Miss in his final three or whatever. But, when you have a quarterback that's as dynamic as we have and an offense that's as fine-tuned and well-oiled machine that's going, receivers in general want to play for a team that's got that. I feel good about both. I wouldn't bet on it. I'm not a betting man, Ryan, but I would not be surprised if we got both. And Jalen Key is a legacy as well.
Yeah, well, Jalen Key, I think definitely we get the hometown discount. He grew up in the general vicinity of Tallahassee and even went to Godby at one point in his life. His family still lives nearby. So, I mean, if you removed him, let's say Jalen Key was from Mississippi and it was down to Florida State or Alabama, I would probably be thinking, well, that's an easy no-brainer probably right now because Alabama did lose two safeties to the NFL draft, which if you're a transfer product coming out and you're trying to look for a place that can get you to the NFL draft, then you would want to go with the school who just put two safeties in the NFL draft. But we don't have the Mississippi kid. We have a Tallahassee native who I think, if it's up to me, I think we have a more than 50-50 shot at getting him. For Keon Coleman, I think it's purely about the attraction of playing for a winning program, a good quarterback where he can put up numbers. I mean, I did a little bit more digging, Vince, on Keon Coleman over the weekend just because I was bored, as some of our group texts may indicate. But I will say that Keon Coleman racked up that many yards, over 600 yards of receiving yards, with an awful quarterback.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
I was watching the replays, and some of the throws were not good. A lot of the throws were it felt like Vince, who was our Hornibrook?
Hornibrook.
There's a lot of those little throws that aren't getting there real quick and are 50-50 balls. And all I can imagine is this guy running, right up the seams. I know Mike Norvell's offense, what we like to do is to kind of threaten with that inside read and then dump it over right down in between the linebackers and the safeties in the middle of the field. And that's what this guy's bread and butter is. I mean, he goes up, he makes 50-50 catches. So I'm really, really excited from what I saw from him with a terrible offense. In fact, it's kind of shocking that he put up the numbers he did with how not great the quarterback situation was there.
Yeah, and if you read into that, which I know you did, he got out of Dodge there because I think he thought that quarterback was going to come back, and I think he left too. So Michigan State is hemorrhaging offensive players at this point.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you got Johnny Wilson, right? And if Keon Coleman comes over, isn't he 6'3" as well, 6'4", somewhere around there?
Sure. And then this weekend you add in a potential unicorn is going to be coming on officially this weekend. Apparently, they're going to meet apparently at the Moore Center on I think Saturday. And
May 12th, I think maybe.
We're supposed to actually have the unicorn. Vince, you want to speak his name?
No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it till after. Just know that there's a possibility that one of the things that you don't think is ever going to happen, like once a recruit signs on the dotted line and they don't show up, you're kind of you just realize it's just water under the bridge. You're never going to see them. So this is a rare thing, and so we're just going to enjoy it. I'm not going to say the name out loud. But yeah, so you got that. But then, so what would be the deterrent, right, for Keon Coleman? The deterrent might be that there's only so many footballs to go around.
I would say that if that was the potential deterrent, Mike Norvell has to put on 2 seconds of his offense where everyone gets the ball every game. Yeah,
and also, as a prolific offensive player, you don't want to be the only game in town for your team because your opposing team only has to load up on you.
Yeah, double team all day.
Right. So if you have other weapons in your arsenal, I mean, it only helps everyone, pad their stats, whatever you want to do, right? To show the scouts, what
Sure.
you could possibly do, right?
Yeah, he would definitely be the Rashad Green to Kelvin Benjamin, Johnny Wilson being Kelvin. Hopefully Kelvin. I would love Johnny Wilson this year to be Kelvin Benjamin. But that's what you're looking for is a all-purpose wide receiver, whereas Johnny Wilson is kind of your home run deep threat that's gonna make a lot of the leaping catches one-handed for a touchdown. And we need someone. And here's the interesting thing: whether it be the unicorn, should that actually happen, or maybe Winston Wright is amazing when he actually sees the field. And no one will be happier than us, right? If Winston Wright is fully healthy and dominating come this fall. But you can't bank on that. He hasn't played college football in 2 years because of the injury. He was supposed to play last year, got in the car accident. But now he's coming off that accident. Who's to say that he is ever going to be 100%? I mean, Mackenzie Milton, much different situation.
Sure.
We were all excited in that summer because we're thinking, well, if he is right, he looked pretty good in the spring game. But what I came to realize from that situation, it's kind of like Tiger Woods right now. I'm going to use this as a reference point. Tiger Woods right now on Thursdays, if you watched him in the Masters, great round in Thursdays. And you're like, wow, man, that guy was in a car accident last year and was like almost died. And he comes out on Thursday. Then on Friday, some of those aches and pains, and all of a sudden the round starts going downhill. And by Saturday, he withdrew and he couldn't walk. So it's kind of like, yeah, maybe the LSU game, Winston Wright comes out and has a couple amazing catches. But as the season wears on, how do those injuries resurface? So you cannot bank on him. We're definitely not going to bank out on the unicorn until he's actually here.
You're right.
So this is our guarantee, right? Like if he comes in, he's a proven starter.
He's a proven starter, and but he's not necessarily, at least on our team, he's not necessarily a one, right? We don't need him to be, and he hopefully that's not what he is absolutely looking to be, because if he's a two, or maybe a combo 2 with Kentron. Now, we can't forget about him, right? He has made significant strides.
He's so much mark.
I mean, he only because his ramp up has taken time. I think we all have a little bit of we're kind of hedging our bets a little bit with him. But if you think about it, if you've got Johnny Wilson, you've got Keon Coleman, Kentron, Winston Wright. I mean, neither Kentron.
They're all over 6'2".
Right. Neither Kentron nor Keon need to necessarily be that dude every down.
Also, add the tight end to that. Add a really, really, really good SEC tight end that we have, and then you're talking about. I was listening to a fellow, one of our favorite podcasts this morning, and they were talking about. Imagine you're an ACC team, you're Wake Forest, and you have your average, let's say 5'8" DBs that weigh 150 pounds at Wake Forest soaking wet, and then you line up every receiver and tight end starting at FSU. There's no way that they're going to be able to body them up anymore. Like we were going up against those teams over the last couple of years with receivers that were 5'10" to 6 foot, little.
Oh, that was the big joke.
Yeah.
That everyone on our core was less than 6 feet tall.
Yeah. So now you line up these monsters, which these receivers, if we get Keon and you combine them with everything else that we already have on the roster, that's what you saw like at LSU that year when they won the national championship a few years back, where you're like, good Lord, like good luck playing against. Usually every team has one guy that's like 6'3" or 6'4".
Sure.
But very few get 4 or 5, and we could be one of those teams. And that's what we need to win a championship.
We haven't even been talking about Vendravius Jacobs,
right?
Or Hakeem Williams.
They're all huge.
I mean, and they are all. I mean, the upside, the floor is very high. I mean, these guys are all. It's an embarrassment of riches. I think it's going to be. It's really going to challenge Norvell's ability. And when you have all those toys to play with at Christmas, like which one are you going to spend your most time with? So again, we talk about it every week, Ryan. It's going to be fun to watch this all play out. But I think we're supposed to find out about Jalen Key on Friday.
And that's a big get because right now, the only person he's really going to be competing with is Akeem Dent. And I really believe that whether it's him or Akeem, they're probably going to be splitting reps. Wouldn't you agree? Like probably like pretty close to 50-50. I mean, you want some to keep them fresh, playing safety.
Yeah, I think you want to. I mean, let's face it, with the portal and everything that happened with the portal, that safety room is taking a hit.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that they were all world players that left, but they were capable players.
Yeah.
And so that room is thin. We got to have some more depth there. And so maybe that is a big deal, man. Jalen Key, he's going to play a lot.
Yeah.
He's going to play a lot for a name brand program that's going to be on TV all the time. And the hype train is rolling. So, I mean, there's no downside.
Yeah. Well, Vince, a lot of people think that I think we need to stay away from, as a fandom, the hyperbole of every single position has to be absolutely stacked because we're going for a national championship. Think about 2013, Vince. Who's the starting safety, Vince, in 2013?
Oh my goodness. They all went to the league, Ryan.
Wasn't it? So I know that it was. Wasn't it Nate Andrews?
That might have been the year before, but because I know he got hurt.
Whoever it was a first round draft, right?
Yeah.
Behind him, I remember this. Behind him was Tyler Hunter, who was green as anything.
Yeah. And
we didn't worry about it because
you haven't right.
It's not a player that generally safeties don't get injured every day. It's not like playing running back or offensive line where one trip and an ankle is gone. Safety is really hard to really get injured that bad.
Right. And the other good thing, if you're going to lack some depth at a position on the defensive side, safety is probably the area, right? Because the defensive line is going to take care of a lot of the issues, right? It's going to prevent those plays from progressing to a point where the safeties necessarily have to get involved.
Yeah.
I think the safety, and I don't want to discount the importance of the position. It's obviously important, but I think if there is a room that you can weather a little bit of thinness, it would be that one. What do you think about the running game here, Ryan? We got a comment here from Tim Shipp from the Great White North. Wants to know how the Noles running game is going to look this year.
I think the best word is dominant and powerful.
Why do you say that?
All right, so Trayshawn Ward gone. We love Trayshawn, right?
Yeah.
All right, but Vince, last year, just off the top of your head, without looking up any facts, who were the running backs that maybe, like, unlike Trayshawn, who was a go-to guy and everything, that you went, wow, that guy, man, that's going to be fun to watch? Who was that guy, Vince, last year to you?
Rodney Hill.
Rodney
Right.
Hill. And what is Rodney Hill? He's running back 2 this coming year, right?
I think so.
Behind a guy who already has done amazing things at Florida State. So Rodney Hill, in my opinion, had more upside than, forgive me the name, last year, our starting running back.
Trey Benson.
Trey Benson, who's bulky, amazing. I mean, just unbelievable talent. But I watched Rodney Hill, and I saw a guy who has some real upside, that where, like, his minimum, which we've already seen, is probably like an A tier in the ACC.
Absolutely.
Like, he would start in any ACC team, and he's your number 2 running back. I mean, it's incredible, right? So with those two on the field, with all those 6'2" to 6'3" wide receivers, and
the tight ends,
offensive line, and a tight end, and a All-American quarterback throwing the ball. I mean, I have a feeling that if a team's trying to shut down the running backs, we're going to smoke them in the air. If they're taking away our passing game, man, we're going to torch them all day on those design runs that Norvell is so good at. So I think it's going to be a very balanced offense this year, almost 50-50.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the plan. Mm-hmm. That would be the plan, because if you go into it with that kind of balance, then, I mean, you're giving the opposing team a lot to think about leading up to that game. And, knock on wood, the injury bug, hopefully it stays away as much as it can. I know you can't totally avoid it. But, Trey Benson, Rodney Hill, Toa Philly.
Is that, like, yeah, he's on. We love him, right? We love Toa Philly, because he does,
especially catching out of the backfield.
Yeah, it's the little wheel routes, and he does those flashy, like, spin moves where, like, he almost goes down and then he spins and holds, and he takes off. But also, I think we're forgetting another player in the end around game, in the wheel route game, Ja'Kai Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people forget he was injured a lot of last year, and so all those wheel routes that we were running with Micah Pittman, that's good. We're going back, and don't forget, 2 years ago, he was the one who was running those wheel routes and getting us those big gains.
Oh yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Just another piece. Like, we're literally, 2 years ago, we were hoping Norvell could just stay above 500 and get this thing going, and now we're talking about an offense that is probably going to be one of the best we've seen in a decade.
Yeah, it could be. And you think a few years ago, when people like Dalvin Cook and they were just keeping the team afloat because they were the only one that had the the requisite skill, to sometimes
needs your help.
Sometimes the only way we won games.
Oh, Dalvin single-handedly won at least 3 games a year
because of a single player, right? Yeah. And now is Rodney Hill as good as Dalvin Cook? Remains to be seen. That would be great, wouldn't it? Yeah. But that would be a pretty lofty thing to get to. But Rodney Hill and Trey Benson have something that Dalvin Cook never had, which is a balanced offense with an offensive line that actually is worth something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
I don't know if you noticed this, Vince, how many times, now a couple of them were a little ugly because we didn't have our starting line out there, but during the spring, how many of those little forward pitch passes did you see to the running backs from Jordan Travis, where he would back up to throw it and they would become collapsing in on him from the sides, and he would just pitch it forward
Yeah.
to the running backs. We did that at minimum, I think, like 6 times in that spring game.
And we didn't see a lot of that actually last year or the year before. So,
Right. So
I
I
mean,
think we're adding this element because we
Yeah.
have so many players that Norvell now has enough toys where he can finally open up his full Memphis playbook that he had there.
I don't even know. I mean, I was so impressed last year. It's kind of hard for me to think what the next level is. Now, everything's got to gel and all this kind of stuff. But we, it's more probable than not that we are going to see a whole nother level. And then it's really up to the defense to make sure that that they're doing their part to keep the opponents, 24 or less, right? So if that's the case, I mean, with the offense that we should have, and we're pumping this team up like everyone else is, with the offense that we should have, if we have a defense that's, top 25 defense, it's going to be a heck of a ride, Ryan.
Last thing on this, I'm sure you saw it. You saw the post-spring top 5 from USA Today having us at number 3.
Yeah.
I mean, so we're getting excited because those are the kind of ratings that when they start pushing forward and more momentum gets gained, can you imagine if we add Keon and Jalen Key, because all of them are going to be like huge wins. We're already like, I think 1 or 2 on total transfer portal like performance this year.
Sure.
And that would just like solidify it. And I don't know, I'm really thinking we could have a close to top 5 matchup first game of the year against LSU. And you talk about that environment, man.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I have requested my tickets, and I think you have as well, Ryan.
6 of them, yeah.
So that's coming up, and like I said, I don't want to wish the time away, but man, what the build up to this season. I mean, let's talk about that real quick. It was just written the other day on a website that the ticket sales, the request for tickets is as high as it's been since 2014, I think is what they said. Something like that.
They expect us to have an average attendance of 70,000 or more.
When we haven't been there for quite a while. And, when a team doesn't play well and the coaching staff is in a shambles, people don't like to watch teams like that. I can't figure that out. But yeah, so the ticket demand is very high, and we haven't even hit, according to Michael Offer, we haven't even hit the time period in the year where it really starts to ramp. People start to get excited about it, so they're already well ahead of where they thought they would be.
Most people, unlike you and I, who live in this, we live day to day, like checking Florida State fan sites and Twitters and everything. I would say 50% of the fans out there are casual fans, where maybe come July, where they're at the 4th of July barbecue and their family starts talking about, hey, excited about the season. They start talking about what games they want to go to. Generally, it's around July or August when normal people start saying, okay, what are our plans here? Like, what do we want to do? So, I mean, I don't even want to think. First of all, it's exciting that we don't have to drive 8 hours to get to the first game of the year this year. It's an hour and a half down south. But second, when we get to that first home game, I mean, that if we have especially if we have an LSU, either way it'll be sold out first home game. But if we have an LSU win, Vince, let's say hypothetically we start at number 4 or 5, which is where I think I'm going to give away a little prediction already. I think we'll be a top 5 team to start the year preseason. Mm-hmm. If we beat LSU, the week 2 is the hyperbolic season for rankings, right? Like if someone has a big win or a big loss,
right. A big move happens. Yeah, a big move happens there.
I mean, we hypothetically could be in the top 3.
Sure.
In the very first home game, and you imagine that atmosphere. It's going to be.
And it would be a deserved thing. I mean, depending on what the other teams do as well, right? But it would be a deserved thing. I mean, our rivals will say that it's all fluff and all hot air. You had one decent season in the last 5 years and whatever. Okay, whatever. There's some truth to that.
Yeah.
But you cannot deny the roster.
Yeah.
You can't deny it. You can't deny the roster.
It's the same team and then some that beat 6 in a row last year.
Yeah. So all of the the barbs that were thrown our way last week or whenever the NFL draft happened about Florida State only had one guy drafted and the rivals had this many. I was like, well, you know why? Because
Mike Norvell
a lot of those people came back.
Every one of them did. I mean, Jared is projected to be a top 10 pick.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can't deny the roster. The games have to be played, and we'll see what happens. But, I put it in a nutshell, I'd rather be us than them, right? Tim's got another question here for us, Ryan. How's the defense going to be handled the top 5 offenses across the board since, quote unquote, defense wins championships? I don't know that is always the case anymore.
Not anymore. Defense helps when winning a championship. I think offense alone can get you to the playoffs. You might need a defense. See last year watching the national championship, an offense can get you to the playoffs
really far.
And I'll be honest with you. If you told me right now, Ryan, shake my hand, you guys are going to go to the playoffs, but you'll lose in the first round, I'd shake your hand, give you a hug, and be jumping up and down that we made the playoffs.
It's the climb.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that I don't think it's the end all be all. I think we know the offense will be dominant as long as Jordan Travis is healthy, because the other pieces on the offense, if one went down, we have enough pieces to move it around. But if Jordan Travis stays healthy most of the season, or at least relatively healthy, it'll probably be a top 10 offense. That can get you pretty close to undefeated in the ACC.
It can. And Tim's right, though, because if you look back last year, whenever we played an offense with a pulse, it seemed like, with a passing game pulse, we struggled, and it really required the offense to turn on the burners. But I think the defense, while the offense's ascension has been a little more steep, the defense has been gradually getting better too. It just it hasn't been as steep as a climb. But I do think next year's defense is going to be the best that Adam Fuller has put on the field. And let's face it, that has to do with the quality of players that they're getting now.
Well, it's players and continuity. Like, we haven't had to do big turnovers on the staff of like the defensive coordinator or anything like that. So
right.
I love continuity across a team, and that helps just get people more comfortable, and then players coming in. And I think one thing to keep in mind, I understand the point of facing elite offenses. Guys, turn off Florida State's games and watch around the country. Watch Alabama when they play a top 5 offense in the SEC. They give up 40 on the regular.
Absolutely, they do. And he's a defensive guy.
Yeah. In modern college football, you can have you can be Georgia and still have a team, which it did happen last year, put up mid-30s on you because they're a really good offense. What you have to do, what a defense buys you, is blowouts against most of your teams if your offense is also good. So if you have a really amazing offense and a pretty good defense in the ACC, most of your games will probably be a lot like the 5 in a row that we won last year, where it was like 20 to 30 point victories. All you're hoping for is that when you go against a Clemson, let's use Clemson as an example, that you're just at least on par with them from a, hey, they get us, we come back and score, they come back and, if even if it's a 45-42 shootout, no one's going to be like, man, the defense cost us. No, it'll be like, that was Clemson and not DJ Ungule throwing ducks out there, except when he plays us. It's one of those things that a good defense, all it will do is keep you from getting blown out.
I think that you make a good point, and I don't know that you were going this way, but when you started to say this, I started thinking about it. What the defense gives you is, in most of your games, it gives you comfort to the point where you pull your starters on offense, and you're saving their legs and their bodies for the games that may be a shootout.
Yeah.
And so, while the defense may falter in a game or two, the thought is, the hope is that throughout the rest of the year, it has allowed the rest of your team to save themselves for those games where their backs are against the wall.
Yeah, think of the last half of the season. Jordan Travis was at halftime with a baseball cap on most of those games.
Yeah.
Just chilling, having a good time.
Sign me up for some of those.
Yeah.
Sign me up for some of those. We have a quick hello here. I just want to throw this up here too. John Bellardino is a longtime friend of the program. He's been with us for years, and he's at the Red Sox game in Atlanta. So lucky you.
Still tuning into Garnet and Old.
Yeah, on YouTube, by the way.
Yeah.
YouTube, Facebook are where you can catch it live. You also can catch us after the fact on podcasts extraordinaire, whether it be Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever. We're everywhere. We try to be. But John, I hope you're doing well. Hopefully you can join us at a later time where you can join the conversation as well.
Absolutely. So it's not going away from like the bigger, because I think to answer the question for Tim is, we'll see. I think the LSU game, you'll know pretty quickly where we stand against elite offenses, because make no mistake, LSU has an elite offense. At the second half of last year, LSU went from really confused when they play us to pretty darn competent. So we'll know pretty quickly. So it's a TBD until the first game, whereas the offense, we can book that it's going to be good. Aside from the transfers and all that going on and the attendance uptick, Vince, I know there's one other special thing to your heart that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things really. I'm going to start with a real basic one, and that is happy birthday to Billy Joel. Right, 74 years old. He's my favorite. I had to throw that in, but anyway, I wanted to say that. But I brought this up that I wanted to talk about this in the show, and I brought it up to Ryan. Ryan's like, I have no idea what you're even talking about.
This is the Garnet and Old, about the old part of Garnet and Old.
This is the old part of Garnet and Old. So. Today is the anniversary of Marshall McDougall hitting 6 home runs against Maryland in a single game. And so I'm just going to kind of, this was, let's see, 24 years ago.
Okay. So what year would that be? That was like 90 something, 90.
I don't know. This is 23, right? So it'd be 99 roughly.
Yeah. So I was about 13 years old, Vince.
Yeah. So this is just a. So again, Garnet and Old, right? But
yeah,
I think he got a single in his first at bat, and then for the next 6 at bats, he just plowed the ball over center field time after time after time. And
was that a home game? No, it's not.
No, this was away. And one of them was a grand slam. So let me just say, like, you go to a ball game. Our buddy John Bellardino's at a ball game. Imagine if he's there and somebody hits 6 dingers in a single game. John's going to remember that game for the rest of his life.
For sure.
Because that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. But this is, again, something that I quote unquote celebrate every year on May 9th. Marshall McDougall Day, 6 home runs against Maryland.
Well, the only reason I got confused on whether it was a home game is because despite it being 23 years ago, that stadium looks about like what our stadium looks like today.
It's some part. We've got the bigger board now, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we added a 20-inch TV to a 1984 Civic, but yeah.
Yeah, we won't get into the upgrades that are needed at Dick Hauser.
Just get rid of the puddles, Vince. That's all I want when I'm walking in the tunnel. I don't want to step in a puddle.
Hey, the money's coming, Ryan. The money's coming.
The SEC it is, Vince. One thing I did want to mention today, real quick, because it wasn't an official news item or anything. A little conference realignment tidbit.
Oh boy, here we go. Yeah, let's talk about it.
So, another podcast that we listen to, we can mention them. Yeah. So, Wake Up War Chant.
I don't have any problem mentioning anybody.
Ira Schofel, he's a great person and great writer, mentioned that he he does believe this morning that in the next 18 months there will be some sort of indication from Clemson and Florida State that we are what our intentions are and specifically where they point to. Even though the logistics and what year we actually join, in this case, potentially the SEC, wouldn't be for maybe 3 to 4 years. But just the thought that within the next football season, Vince, hopefully before the football season starts, we get something. But sometime in this football season, I want to wake up one day, Vince, to ESPN.com saying Florida State and Clemson announce they intend to join X conference and are challenging grant of rights or whatever the motive is. I just wanted to throw that out there because it was exciting. And that, people like Ira are pretty well plugged in. And we just had a show, 2 weeks ago where similar, maybe a little bit quicker timeline, but similar thoughts about Florida State and Clemson are going to make it known they're out. And what's interesting is that the ACC spring meetings are coming up.
They are
this month. And there's a lot of talk on, all right, so Florida State and Clemson, their message temporarily to the ACC is like, we make the ratings happen in this conference, so we should get a bigger share of the pie on the revenue. Because right now, all the ACC teams evenly split. Wake Forest gets the same TV revenue that Florida State does, which is insane. But a good point I heard this morning. Why would any other team outside Florida State, Clemson, maybe Miami, even make an effort to, if they know that Florida State and Clemson are bouncing anyways? So wouldn't they temporarily want to make the most money they can possibly hold on to for now until they can figure out what they're doing next? Because it would be like, even if today Wake Forest said, you know what, give all the money to Florida State and Clemson, we'll take zero. We want to keep this conference together. Florida State and Clemson are still leaving. Okay. So all that's going to cost is Wake Forest free money. Like, they might as well hold fast and say, no, screw you, Florida State and Clemson. All the good board of governors are going to want to keep what we currently have set up and then let Florida State and Clemson bounce. That's
if you think about it, they're going to ride the gravy train as long as they can because there's no, in my opinion, other than a complete cave from ESPN, which I don't think is going to happen, to redo the deal. There is no way that this conference is going to survive as is. It just can't. It just can't. And Florida State and Clemson are going to be the first ones out the door, and be the first teams that another conference would want because of their commitment to the sport, because of the eyeballs, and because of the Clemson more so recent success, but ongoing success of the programs. And football for sure, right? That's the driver. But let's face it, Florida State's other sports programs, baseball side right now, right? They are always going to compete. They're always going to compete, and they're always going to be.
At least bring positive
front of mind.
Yeah, most schools, most people might not be aware, but most collegiate schools outside of maybe basketball and college football, most schools, baseball does not even bring a couple hundred fans to the stadium. Florida State on the regular brings near sellouts to every home game. And so unlike most schools in the United States, basketball, baseball, women's basketball, softball, like all of these are in the green revenue sports, which for most schools is not the case.
Yeah, that's right. And because they put out a good product, 99% of the time. And there's...
Oh, go ahead.
And as evidenced by the number of Florida State shows and podcasts that are out there, people consumed by their alma mater or the school that they root for. There is an audience. There's an audience for Garnet and Old.
Yeah.
There's an audience for tennis. There's an audience for volleyball. You name it. It's there. And speaking of audience, Tim wants to know what's going to happen to the ACC Conference TV channel.
That's an easy answer. So, Tim, ESPN owns the ACC network and SEC network. So, hypothetically, if the two main teams from the ACC FSU and Clemson join the conference, my guess is that the rest of the ACC would be dissolved and spread out amongst maybe the Big 12 or what's left of the Big 12 and the Pac-10 and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest with you, the revenue gained by taking the only schools that matter from a TV eyeball standpoint and bringing them to the SEC and the SEC network would completely write off any kind of loss or expense. Because right now, just being frank, if you ever watch the ACC network, first of all, I apologize that you have to live through the commercials, the as seen on TV products that are on there. But
attack glasses.
Yeah, the ACC network ain't driving a whole lot of viewership. I would guess that the revenue stream from the ACC network is not much to write home about, and that if they took all the best teams and put them in the SEC, that would make up for it just from a rating standpoint.
Yeah, and going back to what happens to the other schools, you're right. I mean, at that point, some of them are going to the Big 12. Some of them are going to the SEC. Some of them are going to the Big 10. Some of them are probably not even meant to be Power 5 programs.
Sure, yeah, and we know who those programs are. And I even heard something that was interesting, that the SEC at some point, when they want to add more powerful teams, there may be current SEC teams that, although they love the revenue, are not teams that are interested in being all football all the time and might actually end up leaving the SEC.
That would shock me.
No, there's some real discussion on this, that the kind of teams that SEC Network wants to bring in is nothing but brands that attract eyeballs, and that they could allow some of these teams to leave, like a school like a Vanderbilt, who's not going to compete. Do they want to get beat every year and be 0-12, or do they want to go and play a lower level of football?
They'll be 1-11 because they'll beat the Gators every now and then. Yeah. But yeah, I just can't see them, purposefully walking away from that kind of money.
The SEC network, the SEC as a conference, when it comes time to re-sign any agreements, saying, you know what?
Oh, a different animal, right? Yeah. Different animal. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Who knows what it's going to be?
It's exciting.
I have no love lost with the conference. Like, I'm not a conference. The SEC is like this big time. Like, I can't remember. Yeah, somebody tweeted something the other day, and I kind of side-eyed it and had a just means more moment as I tweeted back to him. It's like, there's no conference rah rah rah. It's my team, right? I don't care what conference is in.
Virginia Tech win a national.
No,
screw them forever.
No, I don't want. It was something to the effect of he was an Alabama fan, and somebody had asked him if he rooted for Auburn when they won the title. He goes, absolutely, SEC. I'm like, oh God, I'm going to throw up in my mouth here a little bit. You never ever. But again, that's a different animal.
Every playoff game that Clemson was in, I was like, I don't care.
Mark my words, Ryan. Hear me now and believe me later. If we move to another or when we move to another conference, you will never ever hear me, except making fun of others, chant for a conference. It's just not going to happen.
No. I always thought it was dumb, and it's kind of I think most fans don't care. It's just a way to poke fun at lesser conferences. That's what it's really about. But
especially when your team individually isn't any good.
Yeah, I've definitely heard teams that are 3-win teams in the SEC like being like, but the SEC has 2 teams in the playoff, and you're like,
you've done nothing to make that happen.
That's awesome for you. I'm happy that you're sitting at home Christmas break with no bowl game to watch.
That's right. Oh man. So let's talk about what's coming up in the next few weeks, Ryan, just so our viewers and our listeners know what's going to be happening.
Yeah, fun stuff, at least for me and Vince. So next week, Vince will be riding solo. I will be on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, and then we will both be back together the following week. And then the following week after that, Vince will be on a cruise ship in Alaska, and I will be running solo. So that being said, we will still have a show every week. We'll still be posting it. Everything will be normal. It'll just be probably a different flavor. You'll get a little solo Vince or a little solo Ryan. Maybe a special guest will show up. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Could be. And this would be the perfect time if any of our listeners, watchers out there want to send us some questions to talk about, some topics to talk about. Be helpful.
Maybe I'll bring Melina Myers on to talk about Florida Blue and how terrible they are. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah. So we're looking forward to that. Ryan's doing the great thing of going on a cruise not during football season.
Mm-hmm. I don't have any cruises planned, Vince, for the fall.
That's perfect. But yeah, so that's what's happening in the next few weeks. And as we always say, folks, we trying to build the family here. Let your friends know. Tune in when you can live. If you can't tune in live, watch us later, listen to us later, and let's continue to grow the family. Let's continue the climb, Ryan.
For sure. Wake up, check mark, work out, check mark, listen to Garnet and Old, and then execute the rest of your day.
Bring value and execute the rest of the day. Value and execute.
So for the Garnet and Old Show, that's Vince. He has no inside info, no contacts, no problem. And then it's your boy, Ryan, Garnet and Old Podcast.
Oh, go Knowles. We'll see everybody soon.